Hi, I'm Leo Cox. Welcome to my channel. Shenandoah National Park is a long, thin park, 312 square miles running along the ridge tops of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which these mountains form the eastern boundary of the Shenandoah Valley. The valley was a very important transportation corridor even before European settlers arrived. It was important during the Civil War, as a matter of fact. 3 major campaigns, which are memorialized within the park, were fought in the valley. 2 of them were led by Andrew Jackson, as a matter of fact. It's important today. Interstate 81 runs right down the middle of the valley. It's a popular park. It's in the top 25 as far as visitation is concerned. That's because it's close to population centers. It's just 75 miles from Washington, D.C. The park was established in 1935 after about 500 families were relocated outside the park boundaries. The families are gone, but the signs of their past are evident in the piles of rocks that you find. Great big piles of rocks, as a matter of fact, formed by the farmers clearing their fields to make it ready for planting. The rocks are also used to make low stone walls surrounding small family grave sites with headstones, some of them marked, some of them unmarked. These vestiges of the park can be found alongside many of the 500 miles of trails in the park. This includes just over 10 miles of the Appalachian Trail in the park boundaries. Most of the trails are easily accessible from the Skyline Drive, which bisects the park from north to south. The National Park website for Shenandoah is an excellent reference for trail guides and maps. They're listed by distance, or you could have them listed by your interests, whether you want waterfalls or solitude or something that's child friendly. It also has information on the most popular set of trails in the park. It's those that lead to the top of Old Rag Mountain. It is so popular that a special day use permit is required to access those trails. What we're going to do is just take a look at always look for a family visiting, doing some day hikes. This was some 30 years ago, so let's take a look.
A short tunnel pierces a rock formation in the mountainous region of northern Virginia. The engineering and construction of the tunnel took years to complete, a rather long period of time by some measures. However, the evolution of the rock formations that the tunnel pierces formed over a time frame that can scarcely be imagined. From a volcanic birth 1 billion years ago, through subsequent upliftings, submersions, and erosions, the granite rocks of this ancient mountain chain continued to evolve into their present form. Historians and archaeologists believe that human presence in this land can only be traced to the past 10,000 years or so, a mere moment of time compared to the millions of years it took for these mountains to evolve. Nearly 3 centuries ago, an adventurous breed of newcomers to a strange land pushed inland from the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. Some came to seek their fortune. Others sought adventure. Many came to escape forms of tyranny and persecution. Some even came to escape the law. These early settlers flooded into the fertile valleys of the various mountain ranges that are collectively known as the Alleghenies. Farmers filled the highlands of the Piedmont region and crossed the Blue Ridge Mountains into distant valleys in a continuing press westward. One of the most beautiful of these valleys is drained by a meandering river. The name of this broad, shallow river is repeated both in the names of the valley and also in the national park that overlooks it, Shenandoah. Settlement required natural resources. For the early settlers, the hardwood forests of the mountainsides yielded lumber for their homes, and the rushing streams provided power for their mills. As the valleys filled with people, later arrivals found the only available land was on hillsides, ridges, and even mountaintops. This long abandoned pile of rocks testifies to the tremendous challenge faced by early settlers as they cleared the land of trees and rocks. As a young nation struggled to establish its identity, forces from beyond the mountain settlements impacted the people and the land. Military activity during and increased mechanization after the Civil War altered the lifestyle of the mountain people. Within just a few generations, the worn-out land could no longer support the demands placed upon it by its occupants. The people began to leave the mountains and ridges. In many places, the only testament to their presence is a decaying cemetery, such as this small plot located next to the Fox Hollow Trail across from the Dickey Ridge Visitor Center. In 1926, Congress established Shenandoah National Park. In the decade that followed its establishment, landowners were resettled outside the park. Construction of the Skyline Drive began, and members of the Civilian Conservation Corps began building shelters, trails, and other visitor facilities. The park was dedicated in July of 1936 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. From that point on, nature's resilience began to reclaim the land. Today, nearly half of the park has been designated as a wilderness area, a true testimony to the regenerative power of the natural forests of these ancient mountains. This process is not without its false starts. Throughout the park, nature takes its course as insects and disease attack trees that are not meant to survive in this ecosystem. Hillsides, marred by the whitened skeletons of dead trees, are reminders of this process of natural selection. Even healthy trees fall victim to the forces of nature. Tap roots can't penetrate the volcanic rock just beneath the soil. As a result, heavy winds can easily bring down these towering giants, such as this oak tree, which fell across a hiking trail. Many visitors to Shenandoah think of the park only in terms of the 105-mile-long Skyline Drive that follows the crest of the Blue Ridge Mountains through the entire length of the park. Scenic overlooks and quiet picnic areas provide opportunities to pause and marvel at the haze-shrouded views of distant valleys. However, in order to truly experience the magnificence and the tranquility of Shenandoah, first stop at a visitor center such as the Dickey Ridge or Big Meadows visitor centers. There you will find exhibits, maps, literature, trail and weather information. Use these resources to prepare for a true Shenandoah experience, a hike into the tranquil forests of Shenandoah National Park. All facilities and trails in Shenandoah are keyed to concrete mileposts that are located all along the length of Skyline Drive. Additional concrete posts mark trailheads and trail junctions. The first hike profiled begins just beyond mile marker 9. The short trail to Land's Run Falls follows a fire road to a small series of rocky cascades down a steep hillside. The relatively smooth surface and 325-foot elevation change makes this a good place to stretch some muscles before attempting some longer hikes. The yellow mark on the tree at the right-hand side of the picture is a trail blaze. The color yellow indicates that this trail can also be used by horses. A little more than a half-mile from the trailhead, the small stream known as Land's Run crosses underneath the fire road. The top of the falls is just a few feet off to the right of the fire road. Here, hikers carefully work their way across the stream at the top of the falls and then down the steep bank. Just above the midpoint of the cascade, a rocky outcropping provides a convenient place to watch as the small stream continues its winding journey across the rock face. These rushing waters barely scratch the granite-like stone wall, and yet, as the stream passes down the hillside, a rocky groove traces the path etched upon the stony stream bed over countless centuries. Obviously, the water follows cracks in the underlying rock that resulted from underlying movements in the earth millions of years ago. And yet, the small stream continues to shape the rock as it slowly erodes the crack on its way to a small pool below. As a reminder that many of the stories of this environment occur over periods of just days and weeks, as opposed to centuries, look closely at the forest around you. The sight of butterflies feeding on the short-lived blossoms of a thistle is a classic illustration of a short story in a beautiful mini-environment, if you just stop to look for a while. The next hike is a 1-mile round trip that begins at mile point 39.1. The trail leads to a rocky overlook on Little Stony Man Mountain. The Little Stony Man Trail proceeds uphill from the trailhead at the parking area. 50 yards from the trailhead, the trail comes to a junction with the Appalachian Trail. The white blaze on the tree trunk indicates that you are on the Appalachian Trail. The portion of this 2,000-mile-long trail that traverses the park roughly parallels the Skyline Drive. This short, rocky stretch is a graphic reminder of why sturdy hiking shoes are much preferred over lightweight tennis or gym shoes on all trails in Shenandoah National Park. The unevenness of the trail gives added emphasis to the caution to watch your step. A third of a mile from the trailhead, a concrete post marks a trail junction where the Appalachian Trail heads off to the left. Continue straight ahead past this junction to reach the Stony Man Overlook. Just beyond the junction, the trail breaks out of the forest at a rocky ledge. From the ledge, hikers can look out across the valley, beyond the buildings of the town of Luray, to the shadowy 50-mile-long shape of Massanutten Mountain that frames the western border of the Shenandoah Valley. Off to the left of the overlook, the rocky cliffs of the Stony Man summit provide an excellent opportunity for a group of novice rock climbers to learn a new set of skills. The uneven surfaces of the ancient rock face furnish a perfect place to get over the nervousness that can accompany a climber's first try at rappelling down a rocky cliff. For a study in contrast, move from the rock ledges of Stony Man Mountain to the peaceful forests of the Limberlost region. The Limberlost Trail begins from the parking area on the Old Rag Fire Road. The parking area is 1/10 of a mile off the Skyline Drive at milepost 43. This smooth gravel path is a wheelchair-accessible 1-mile loop with a total elevation change of just over 100 feet. Sunlight almost disappears as the trail winds its way through a grove of tightly spaced hemlock trees. The combination of dense shade and acid soil in this portion of the forest makes it difficult for low-growing plants to take root here. As a result, the ground is covered with a soft blanket of needles that the hemlock shed. The trail crosses the Old Rag Fire Road, which also serves as a horse trail at this point. Just beyond the fire road, the trail passes through a grove that contains a number of massive hemlocks that is the focal point of the trail. A widely circulated and probably true story is that these magnificent trees were saved from cutting when George Freeman Pollock, an early entrepreneur in the area, paid lumbermen $10 for each tree that they left standing. A family stops to check the concrete post marking the intersection with the White Oak Canyon Trail. That trail leads off to the left, while the Limberlost Trail continues on straight ahead. Less than a quarter of a mile past the trail junction, the trail crosses a bridge that spans a small ravine. This small stream is one of the principal sources of water for the waterfalls in White Oak Canyon. Take a moment to stop and sit for a while in order to just listen to the sounds of the many birds that make this forest their home. As the trail leaves the acidic soil of the hemlock grove, ferns that now cover the forest floor begin to border the path. The forest continues to change as a boardwalk takes the trail across a small swampy area. A white-tailed deer pauses in her feeding to check out her surroundings, sniffing the air, listening for unfamiliar sounds, and looking all around for signs of danger. The reason for her extra alertness is found back in the cover of the trees. A young fawn, still showing its camouflage coat, cautiously feeds under the watchful eye of its mother. As the trail returns to the trailhead, it passes through the remains of an old apple orchard. The Crescent Rock Overlook at mile 44.4 offers a preview of the destination for the next hike. That hike will lead to the top of Hawksbill Mountain, the highest point in the park. A short path at the south end of the parking lot leads to Crescent Rock, a popular picnic spot even before the establishment of the park. Crescent Rock is a rocky precipice overlooking Burker Hollow and the rounded top of Hawksbill Mountain. The easiest access to the top of Hawksbill Mountain is from the parking lot at mile 46.7. This 2-mile hike with an elevation change of 520 feet leads to a junction with the Appalachian Trail, and then on to an overnight shelter and an observation deck at the summit. The first half-mile is a steady climb on a broad gravel path that cuts through the heavy undergrowth. The deep forest can provide excellent cover for white-tailed deer, even though they usually can be found at the edge of wooded areas closer to open fields. 2/3 of a mile from the trailhead, the gravel path joins a fire road that leads to the top of the mountain. The fire road is both wider and steeper than the first portion of the trail. However, as you can see, anyone capable of moderate exertion can reach the summit with just a little extra effort. A quarter of a mile up the fire road, a concrete post marks the junction of the fire road with the Appalachian Trail. From this point, it's just 1/10 of a mile to the summit. Near the summit, there are a number of man-made structures, including Bird's Nest Number 2. This open-faced shelter is one of 4 shelters that were built with materials donated by the late Senator Harry F. Byrd Sr. The actual summit of Hawksbill Mountain at 4,050 feet is marked by a stone observation platform built by members of the Civilian Conservation Corps. The panoramic view from the summit starts back at Crescent Rock and the Crescent Rock Overlook on the Skyline Drive. As you look to the left, it continues past the small open rock faces that mark the western slope of Stony Man, which leads down into Burker Hollow and the small community of Ida. The other side of the hollow is formed by the forested slopes of Naked Top. From the summit, return to the trailhead by the same route. This time, leave the mountaintop behind and hike down into a hollow. The trail to Dark Hollow Falls begins from the parking lot at mile 50.7. This popular hike along a creek is a 1.5-mile round trip to a cascade that tumbles 70 feet down a steep rock face. The trail's elevation change is 440 feet. Remember, it's all downhill to the falls and all uphill from the falls. In late summer, there is little water in the stream. But the small ravines' eroded banks reflect the powerful effects of water that cuts the hillside after heavy rains or during seasonal snowmelt. The rocky trail continues to follow the stream known as Hog Camp Branch down into Dark Hollow. Approximately a half-mile from the trailhead, the trail reaches a fenced overlook at the top of the falls. This last portion of the trail is smooth, but it's also the steepest part of the hike. Once again, exercise caution, especially with small children. From the boulders at the bottom of the falls, stop to watch as the waters of Hog Camp Branch tumble down the moss-covered face of a volcanic rock outcropping to form the cascade known as Dark Hollow Falls. Return to the trailhead via the same route. Take your time and enjoy the sights and sounds of the forest on your way back up. The parking lot at mile 42.6 is the starting point for the White Oak Canyon Trail, one of the most popular hikes in the park. A 5-mile round trip with an elevation change of just over 1,000 feet takes hikers to the first of 6 waterfalls that grace the canyon. Once again, remember to pace yourself. The uphill portion of this relatively strenuous trail occurs on the way back to the trailhead. Less than a mile from the trailhead, the trail enters the Limberlost Grove of hemlocks. The painted trail blazes are particularly useful because the trail can be hard to follow when the ground is covered with a uniform blanket of hemlock needles. Shortly after crossing over the Limberlost Trail, the first hint of water that will ultimately form the falls joins the course of the trail. All along the length of the canyon, additional small streams converge to add to the total volume of water in the growing stream that ultimately becomes known as White Oak Run. In early autumn, the stream is nearly dry, but the size of the first footbridge over the stream bed provides a hint of the size of the stream that rushes down the canyon during spring runoff or after heavy rains. Beyond the footbridge, the pleasant sound of water pouring off rock faces into shallow pools combines with the visual appeal of falling leaves in this peaceful stretch of forest, a forest that continues to reclaim this once withered land. White Oak Run is a crystal clear body of water, but that does not mean the water is safe for drinking. Microscopic parasites can be found in these waters, and many of them can cause intestinal disorders. Carry your own water supply on the trail, or be prepared to boil or purify stream water with chemicals or commercial filters. A little over 2 miles from the trailhead, the trail recrosses the creek via another footbridge. A concrete trail marker just to the right of the bridge indicates that the first waterfall is just 0.3 of a mile away. A short, stiff climb to a rocky outcropping on the side of White Oak Canyon provides an excellent view of White Oak Run as it cascades nearly 90 feet down the jagged rock surfaces into the depths of the canyon. A set of rough stairs and a short scramble over a series of boulders that are some of the oldest rocks on Earth takes hikers to the bottom of the falls for a different perspective of this beautiful cascade. Shenandoah National Park is a study in regeneration. Just as the individual oaks and maples of the Blue Ridge proceed through their annual cycles of life, the land itself experiences an even more complex life cycle, reverting from a barren, used-up mountaintop to a true wilderness just a short distance from the nation's capital. It is a slow cycle, but one that continues to proceed as each day is marked by the setting sun over this reclaimed mountain sanctuary, Shenandoah National Park.
If you enjoyed this program, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series.